what's the best experience for the people attending. Different people are going to want different things from the event. People are really committed to learning, and that's really good, but they're not just committed to learning for their own benefit. They're committed to learning and sharing.
Welcome to another episode of MozPod. My name is Chima Major, your host, and our guest today is Kelvin Newman. Kelvin has over 17 years of experience in the digital marketing industry, and he is the founder of Brighton SEO, the largest and most fun search marketing conference in Europe. He loves helping digital marketers meet, learn, and improve their knowledge in content marketing, SEO, and other related fields. Kelvin's passion is creating engaging and relevant events that foster collaboration and community among attendees and speakers. He also has the most gorgeous glasses in the industry. Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Yeah, thanks for saying nice things about my glasses as well. That's made my day. So, yeah.
Today, we're talking about growing from a small room above a pub to the largest SEO conference in the world. Remember, if you find anything interesting from this episode, please use the hashtag MozPod to tag us and share your insights on social media. Kelvin, you started Brighton SEO as a small pub gathering. Can you share the story behind this initial idea and what prompted you to create a dedicated SEO conference?
Yeah, so it really did start out as a few people meeting up in an upstairs room of the pub. So there've been a few sort of informal gatherings of people who lived in Brighton and worked in SEO. And we'd sort of gone down the pub after work on a Friday. And we sort of just decided, well, if we called it a conference, we could go down the pub at lunchtime and sort of like, sneak out from work a bit earlier. So that was that very first event. So there's a pub called the Quadrant, which is by the Clock Tower in Brighton. And there was room for about 15, 20 people or so at that first event, and 30 people showed up. So we had people sort of sat on the floor and sort of like listening to each other. So that was, the kind of first sign that, okay, maybe there's a bit of a demand or a bit of sort of appreciation of getting people together. So we just kept booking bigger venues and it sort of grew from there. And now there's like 3,500 people from 50 different countries coming. So it's really grown, but just because people like gathering together and learning from each other, really.
What year was this?
2010. So it's been a decent amount of time. So it's kept me busy over the last decade and a bit.
You wanted to just find an excuse to go out and drink with people, and then you had a gathering that was supposed to be for 15 people, but 30 people showed up. People were sitting on the floor. Would you consider yourself the John the Baptist or the Jesus of SEO conferences?
I don't know about going
with
that far,
your disciples on the floor listening to wise words from Kelvin.
Well, it wasn't wise words from me, it's from other people. I was kind of like, put the smart people up there talking and I'll just kind of like, introduce them. But it's people like getting together, don't they? And that's sort of like one of the big things about like search marketing as an industry is it really does seem that it's evidenced by things like this podcast. It's like people are really committed to learning, and that's really good, but they're not just committed to learning for their own benefit. They're committed to learning and sharing and helping everyone get a little bit better and do a bit better work maybe, and it's just really nice to get people together.
All right, so walk us through the different stages of growth for Brighton SEO, especially for folks like me that only started going when you got really big. I want to hear all the different venues, what that scaling journey was like, that progress.
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, we do it twice a year. So that's when we were doing just the UK one. So that made a big difference. So we'd every 6 months or so sort of get together to do that. So first one was the Quadrant, which is a tiny little pub. Then Community Base, which is kind of like a community centre. Then we went to Salis Benny, which was like a university lecture hall. Then we went to the Dome and did a few different spaces there. So this is like, people sometimes ask you what your claim to fame is. So mine is that I've played swing ball. So, the kind of tennis game on a pole with a tennis ball on a stick. So I've played that on the stage where ABBA won Eurovision singing Waterloo. So for the US attendees, they might not know ABBA, but for everyone else, that's a kind of pretty cool thing to have been on the stage where ABBA won Eurovision. And then, ended up in the Brighton Centre, which is the big sort of arena, for want of a better description, down by the seaside in Brighton.
So from 16 people to 3,000 people.
Yeah, 3,500
with like
people.
5 different venues growing gradually over the course of what? 20 years?
Yeah, well, coming up for about 15. So
15 years.
So it was, again, just that kind of, I'd like to pretend we went in with a really big ambition that we want to go and be the biggest search event. It's just like each time we did it, more people showed up. So like some of those ones that were at the Dome, we were still releasing, we did most of the tickets on a free ballot now, but we were doing them like on a first come, first served basis. And they like sold out in 15 minutes, then 5 minutes. Then we crashed the ticketing platform. And then we sort of, it's just people like coming together really. And it's just, it was a good place. It was a bit different from some of the other events that were running at that point.
I was just going to come to that, because it sounds like you were not even doing much to sell tickets. You would just like put out tickets and people would just buy those tickets, and then you just get big and then need a bigger venue. But there were definitely other events in the UK that were not doing as well as you were. What do you think was different from Brighton SEO and all these other UK events?
Yeah, I mean, so we do a lot with free tickets, which is quite different. So a lot of like digital marketing conferences are, a paid for ticket. They might be £1,000 or £1,500 a ticket or £700 a ticket. And obviously it felt quite important to me that I wanted to make the event as accessible as possible. So I wanted as many people to attend who perhaps might not have been able to justify that spend. So we had a slightly different way of making money from the event. So rather than selling tickets for hundreds of pounds, we went, okay, we'll make some available. Some people pay to attend, but we give a lot away for free. And then we have sponsors. So it's a slightly different kind of approach there. But that's always been important to me, that I wanted people who either didn't work in SEO, but were interested in it to be able to come along, or people who were just getting started in their career, or just kind of like organizations where sometimes, and I think if you're working in-house, particularly maybe at an agency where there's one or two people working in search marketing, sometimes people can feel a bit isolated or neglected. So I really like the idea of those people who perhaps were really interested in search, but perhaps didn't feel encouraged where they worked, that they could come along to an event, not really pay much more than their travel to get there, and then go away really motivated and excited about the industry. Because I think that's, I want people to be enjoying their job, and that's sort of been part of it.
So you've been doing Brighton SEO for 15 years. I imagine it hasn't all been roses. What has been some of the unexpected challenges you faced as the event grew, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I mean, it's one that will strike me. It's not like a serious one, but so we have this event WhatsApp group of the event managers. And so they'll be okay, that's too warm in this stage or something like that. But we had one where I moderate and introduce people on stage one. And I had this message pop up as I was about to go and introduce someone. It's someone's having a fight with a dinosaur. I'm like, what? So we decided in our infinite wisdom to get one of these dinosaur puppet things that are a bit photorealistic. And someone, it made him jump and he got all a bit scared and ended up having an argument with the puppeteer. So that's definitely one was kind of an unexpected sort of growing pain of it all. But
how did you solve it? You can't just leave me hanging.
Oh, well, I don't, I'm not fully sure. I mean, ultimately, the dinosaur was okay. The puppet lived to roar another day. But no, I think he just made someone jump, and he kind of got a bit sort of thrown off his kind of routine, as it were. But and I mean, and there's been lots of bits like venues, and where events are hard to organize, and they can be, there's quite a lot of moving parts. So I'm very lucky that I've got an amazing team who do a really good job of ensuring that the event runs as smooth as it's possible to, and also when things do go wrong, sort of quickly learning from them. Because I think, again, that's sort of, if you talk about cultures of organizations, one that's kind of quite key to me and the team is each time we complete an event, we sit down and go, okay, what could we do better next time round? And we're often quite overly critical. So people have come in and have been why are you so sort of down on yourself after every event? It's well, because we want to try and do it a bit better. So having a team that are able to sort of have that mentality to learn from things that have gone wrong and try and do it a little bit better each time round has allowed us to improve. And I think I certainly think the events that we put on now are significantly better than the ones we did, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and 10 years ago for sure.
All right, let's talk about COVID, because during COVID, you went virtual and you somehow managed to get people to go virtual and then come back in person in 2020 and in 2021. How did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it feels like a very different time ago now, albeit I think it was, I think it's about 4 years ago now from when we were recording. So it's initially we cancelled the event a lot. So we cancelled relatively early in the scheme of, we had an event that was due to be in April. And we cancelled that earlier than a lot of people who were running events at that point in time. And then we planned it again for July, and then planned it again for September, and then planned it again for multiple times and moved it on. But we did the virtual events, and some of that was necessity. So we kind of had money that we'd received from sponsors, and we needed to kind of provide them with some value for the money that they'd given us. So there was kind of a need there. But also we were quite far along in the cycle. So we had these people who were working on their presentations. They put all the work into producing a really interesting talk and then had nowhere to share it. So we just kind of initially allowed people to kind of record it in their home office, and then we distributed them out. And yeah, it kind of presented some really interesting opportunities for us, because obviously, like, I love getting everyone together and we like it to be accessible and welcoming on those free tickets, but it's quite an ask for people to travel to a location. And Brighton, if people don't know, is a city on the south coast of the UK. So it's about an hour away from London. And for a lot of people who might be in other countries or other bits of the world, or just kind of like, don't enjoy the physical experience of a conference, it was nice to have an ability to share that knowledge in that same way. So that's definitely been something that's kind of triggered on, that we've learned from that process, that we never used to do like an online version of the event or video archives like lots of events do. But it really, seeing the response that had, and the people who were then able to access that knowledge who perhaps wouldn't have been able to before, really sort of encouraged us to make that the default. So there's now like that kind of ability to like learn even if you're not physically in the room. Now I think there's huge like joy that comes from bringing people together in one physical space, but that's not for everyone. So having that knowledge shared a bit wider is kind of quite gratifying.
So how did you get people to come back the next year to Brighton SEO?
We're very fortunate that we've got a great community around Brighton SEO. And I often sort of joke to people that, like, if me and the team sort of got abducted by aliens, the event would still happen because everyone would get together and just organize it anyway. So yeah, when the event came back, people were really excited to be there. And it was kind of quite emotional, which sounds a bit weird because it's a boring, business event, right? But I think people were really kind of glad to be back together.
Okay, so from all of these challenges that you faced, that you've learned from, and from post-COVID putting on events, what has been the new innovations that have come out of all that? Yeah,
like I said, I mean, for us, there's like, it's thinking a bit more about what's the best experience for the people attending. So I think for us, we perhaps beforehand were very keen on, let's just get as many people physically through the door as possible and then it will just work. Whereas kind of it perhaps sort of identified to us that different people are going to want different things from the event. So that might be people, who can't attend. So we'll video it and make it possible for them. But we've also done a lot more like, well, actually, we have things like quiet spaces or kind of things like that, where it's kind of like, well, actually just accepting that not everyone's...
I think you have a daycare coming out now.
Yeah. So for a number of years, we do in the UK event, and we've not been able to do it in the States quite yet, but our UK event, we provide like subsidized childcare. So it's a couple of quid to do that. And again, it's just like, for us, it like in the scheme of what people spend on organizing events, childcare isn't a huge expense compared to like a lot of what it costs to put on for an event. But for the people who would otherwise struggle to get childcare for the event, for them, it's really meaningful. So for us, it's a bit of a no-brainer really to try and, add that to the mix. And it's, again, a lot of what we're doing with the event is trying to go, well, how do we make it as welcoming to as many people as possible? Because the more people it's welcoming to, the more people who come along, and then the more successful the event is. So sponsors meet people that they're happy to meet, the attendees, more people have had a good experience, more people have learned, more people have been inspired to then speak at future events. And it's all sort of this like virtuous circle where it's like, if everyone's benefiting from attending the event, then the event continues to benefit down the line.
Let's do a hot take. What is one thing that frustrates you the most about SEO or the industry?
I mean, sometimes it can feel a bit like, it's strange because it obviously is competitive, right? So when you're doing natural search in particular and paid search as well, you're like competing against other people for those positions. And there are some people who can be kind of quite sort of competitive and don't necessarily have that like attitude where they want everyone to benefit. So they're almost kind of seeing someone else's success being like preventing them from being successful, whereas that doesn't seem to be the approach there. So I think it's changed a bit over the last couple of years, but certainly I think in the past, like some social media platforms and the SEO community on there sometimes can like rub each other up deliberately and try to be aggressive and have arguments. And there seems to be less of that. But when it does happen, I'm not a big fan of that. I just want everyone to get on, really.
If you do SEO for a living, then you know how exhausting competitive research can be. It's not always clear who your real online competitors are. Information about their strategy is scattered. So you spend thousands of dollars on multiple tools to stay informed. To make matters worse, SERPs are dynamic and constantly evolving. So you need to keep a steady pulse on what your competitors are doing. Frankly, it feels like a full-time job. Our new domain overview tool slices through the clutter, giving you a clear view of the competitive landscape. You can quickly spot the keywords driving traffic for your competitors, identify keyword opportunities, and even peek at their backlink strategies. Best of all, it's powered by Moz AI to put vital insights at your fingertips and sharpen your competitive edge. So your conference is expanding to the US now. What are your aspirations for Brighton SEO's international presence?
Yeah, so we did our first event in San Diego in November. So that was a big step for us. I mean, so I'm not from Brighton, but I've lived in Brighton since I went to university. So we'd only really ever done the event in my hometown, essentially. So we've been a little bit scared to do it anywhere else. But post-COVID, there are some events that weren't running in the States, and we were able to make a really great hire. So Lindsay, who's one of our team, who used to work at on SearchLove and HeroConf, was available. So it's kind of like this serendipitous kind of circumstance presented itself, a really great hire. There was a bit of a gap in the schedule for, search events in the States, and we'd always wanted to do it. And the sheer amount of people who were traveling from the States to come to the UK and pitching. So actually, I think if you look at, like, before we launched in the States, I think 50 to 60% of our speaker pitches were from people who are based in the States, despite the event being in Europe. So it always felt like there was a good window for it there. So yeah, we've done one in San Diego, so that's on the West Coast. We're still weighing up at the moment if we want to do an East Coast one as well. But yeah, I mean, I hope it could be as big as the UK event. And again, it's got that similar, lots of free tickets. So we want it to be welcoming to, people who wouldn't be able to pay for a ticket. We've got a similar kind of feel. So I think we're probably one of the more relaxed and informal digital marketing events. So again, we've got that feel for the event there as well.
How did you feel when you got on the stage?
Yeah. It's me acting like an idiot on stage as well. That my kind of glorified amateur dramatics sort of thing, and fancy dress outfits and all that kind of thing. I was unsure if that was going to work for a US audience, but they humoured me when I put on a crocodile outfit. So either they found it funny or just they were so confused they didn't quite know.
Didn't they get the reference?
Yeah, well, this was around the kind of, there'd been a story, hadn't there?
Yeah,
kind
the
of
one
crocodile
of
parties.
yeah.
So it was kind of a fortnight after that story had broke. So got on Amazon and bought myself a crocodile onesie and wore that on stage for part of the day.
I need to find a picture of that.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, there's a few circulating. There's actually quite
I'm just going to Google after this episode, Kelvin Newman crocodile outfit.
Yeah, well, we did this thing. So we had 5 or 6, I think we had 20 or so people all on stage at once when I was doing it. And I was kind of doing my introduction. And someone had taken this photo, and basically all the speakers had never looked so bored. And there was me kind of in this crocodile outfit, posed like this. And there's a lot of people kind of I don't think they were bored. It's just that's how the photo made them look. But it was, properly what is this weirdo doing?
Brighton SEO is known for its unique spin of advertising. You've had life-size seagulls, ice cream trucks, and more. How do you maintain this distinct flavor as the event scales up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you look at a budget, when you're organising events, there's lots of things that you could be spending money on. And we've deliberately decided not to do some of them. So we don't cater like lots of events do. And that saves us loads of money. And we then kind of go, okay, well, we've got these pots of money. What could we do with them to try and be entertaining? And yeah, so for us, a lot of it's about trying to create a moment that someone's going to want to take a photo of. So it's very easy for business events to feel samey. So it's you're just in, and you're in a hotel, and the conference, you can't even remember what the acronym stands for. And it's all of those sort of, things that don't make it stick in your memory. So we're all continually trying to think of things that people will want to take a photo of and remember. And for a while, when we first moved into the Brighton Centre, so this is the big venue we moved into, there's a big stage there. And our kind of AV crew came and said, okay, we could spend 20 grand on building this posh new stage set that then would have ended up in a landfill afterwards. And I was like, well, I could just buy a camper van for that. So we went out and bought a VW retro camper van for the first time around. So we used that for a few events because it was cheaper than that, and people were taking photos. And then that got broken into, so we sold it. And then I was like, well,
someone broke into the camper van?
Yeah.
Where?
It was in a multi-story car park in Brighton. I think someone was living in it for a period of time as well. So we then went, okay, well, we need another one. And I think then we got the DeLorean from Back to the Future. So we then went through various film cars And so we had the Batmobile, both so the 1966, and then the one from the one with Michael Keaton. So we had that Batmobile. We've had the Ecto one from the Ghostbusters, but now we sort of settled for a little while on an ice cream van, which is obviously like very seasidey in the UK, and we just give away free ice creams. So again, that was like, well, I could spend a load of money building a posh stage set, or I could give everyone a free ice cream, and that kind of felt to me like that was very sensible.
Yeah,
so,
everybody loves a free ice cream.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, and it's hard to keep coming up with new ideas on them, but but also it's sort of, I have to remind myself sometimes that people like the repetition or the kind of, so we do things like tie-dye. So we do Brighton SEO t-shirts, and then we'll have a corner set up where you can dye them in the different colourful patterns and stuff. And we've like considered like not doing that a few times. And we've asked a few people about it, and they've gone, no, I love that. That's my favourite bit of the conference. So we're kind of going, oh, well, actually all these little bits that are, these little extras are quite a nice way of creating a memorable experience.
The conference offers a mix of speakers with diverse backgrounds. How do you ensure this diversity, and why is it important for Brighton SEO?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for when we're organising the event and we are putting on the speaker programme, which is a big part of like my job, I want to just ensure that we have as many different people presenting as possible. And if there's a trap you can sometimes fall into, and we're fortunate that the way that our event works is people are booking tickets without seeing the speaker lineup. So that gives us the freedom to kind of go, well, actually, we just want to program who we think are going to be the best speakers, not necessarily who we think are going to sell the most tickets. So that helps that so that means we then have a priority for having new speakers, because actually my theory is that actually if someone speaks at 20 SEO events a year, they might be a very good speaker, but there's probably someone who hasn't spoken at 20 events who is just as good, but just hasn't had that opportunity. So for us, that's always been a big thing about like, initially it's like, oh, well, we want as many new speakers as we can. We do get repeat speakers, but we like having new speakers. And then it's just a case of going, well, judge the talks on the ideas. So we kind of start by looking at what are the topics people are pitching, not how experienced is that speaker. And then, yeah, so for us, like obviously it's very important that your speaking program should reflect and be similar to your attendee profile, right? You shouldn't be like one type of individual, speaker is like overrepresented in your speaking lineup. So yeah, that's always been important to us. And again, it's just like some of it is like, if you get a reputation for offering opportunities to people who perhaps haven't spoken before, more people feel prepared to put themselves forward. And that then just becomes a sort of like self-fulfilling thing. So like, to say, well, what do we do now to have a diverse speaker lineup? It's like not a lot. We just like look at our speaker lineup, and the people who are putting themselves forward are diverse, right? So it's actually becomes very easy. And that's kind of my belief, is that some people would say it's hard to have a diverse speaker lineup. It's like, no, it isn't. It's like, it's hard. It's lazy not to. Like you've almost got to deliberately be trying not to have that. So yeah, it's just become sort of easy because...
No excuse, basically.
But yeah. I mean, I think I can understand the situation that people think it's hard, but there's never been, there's organizations like WTS, or Women in Tech SEO, that have their speaker directory. There's loads of different sources out there. Look at who is speaking at other events. And if you're like a new event, kind of like try and not just go with who's most likely to be pitching themselves. It's usually the way of doing it.
All right. As the conference landscape is changing post-pandemic, what are the new trends or innovations you're looking to incorporate into future Brighton SEO events?
Yeah, so for us, we've always had a very straightforward people standing up on stage with PowerPoint and doing like a 20-minute presentation. And I'm a big fan of that format. That's like the preferred one I used to do when I was doing more presenting. But we're doing more and more. We're kind of going, that's not the only way that people learn. So we started to do more panels. And again, none of this is rocket science in the world of events. But for us, we had a quite specific formula of how we approached the events, which was you have 12 speakers a day. They all speak for 20 minutes. You have 5 tracks, and that's the format, where we're kind of going, well, actually, no, some people much prefer to have an intimate conversation with 10 or 15 people. Other people like more of a classroom environment. Some people want sessions that are more like an hour and a half or 45 minutes. And which that's taken a bit of a, like on my side as a programmer, a bit more kind of confidence to go, well, actually different people are looking for different things. And also accepting that there's a lot of people who come to the event for the stuff beyond that. So it might be for the parties, it might be for the, networking, and just kind of finding ways that every person in the industry can benefit from the event, not just those who want to sit down and watch the talks.
Hey friend, if you stuck around this far, I'll take it you're enjoying the podcast. Please hit the like button to show your support, subscribe to stay in the loop, and click the bell button to get notified when we release a new episode. Thank you. What advice would you give to someone attending an SEO conference for the first time?
I think not to worry too much about it. I think like there's a danger of being, it's a new thing, and being a bit nervous about it. And being nervous is sort of, inevitable in any kind of new social environment. I get anxiety, everyone does. So I'd say don't worry too much, which is a really terrible thing to say to someone who's anxious about something. But as a general thing to say, that's never bad advice. But sort of know why you're going. And if you're kind of going to try and like narrow the intention that you've got. So maybe it's to just learn about GA4, or maybe it's just to learn about like a very specific thing, and have that intention in mind, because sometimes all of the events that are out there, there's so much going on. Even the single track ones, there's so many speakers, there's so many like networking roundtables, there's so many parties, all of these things going on. And sometimes that can be a bit overwhelming. And I think people who are going for the first time sometimes feel a bit daunted and like it's a bit sort of too much for them. So I think kind of go with the intention of like, okay, I'm just going to achieve this one thing. And if you've got that intention in mind, it usually becomes a little bit easier to have a successful event. And if you've not gone with this crazy to-do list of all of the things that you'd want to do, you might not feel, people have a social battery, don't they? And sometimes they can get a bit exhausted during the duration of like a, 48 hours or 72-hour kind of event as well.
What has been the most rewarding part of running Brighton SEO over the years?
We talked earlier about the kind of the first COVID back one. And like, for me, like if someone before COVID had happened and said you could have 2 years off organising Brighton SEO and come back afterwards, I would have like literally bit their arm off. Where it's like, okay, you don't have to do this really. Like, I love doing it, but it is kind of quite a intense experience. And if someone had said, you can have 2 years off, but then come back afterwards, I would have probably said, thank you. That's a really good deal. But then when we couldn't do it, it's really quite strange when you've spent like 10 odd years or whatever doing a thing and then suddenly be told it's illegal to do your job. So yeah, that first event back and everyone showing up and, jumping through all these hoops as well, because you had to do a load of testing. People were traveling and like, it's easy to forget, but like the process of like flying into the UK when we did our first event after COVID was a stressful experience. You were paying hundreds of quid to get a test and all that kind of thing. So when we had I closed off those 2 days and I do my little kind of sort of like, thank you everyone for coming. That was a really quite emotional experience, because there were times where it looked like we might not ever be able to do that again. And that sounds weird now 3 or 4 years down the line, but like when, you really enjoy events and then you couldn't do them, and it felt like we might never be able to do that again.
Can you share a particular feedback from the conference that has been especially meaningful?
Yeah, I mean, so like we've been like when we were talking earlier about the people who have put themselves forward to speak, that's been like really nice for me. People who have started off, like maybe it's been their first speaking opportunity. And there's quite a few people over the years who have been, we gave them their first opportunity, and that now they've gone on to do like lots of really great things. So I think Areej, you've had on the show before. I think her first major speaking.
Yeah, even me too. Brighton SEO was like my first major speaking event.
Yeah, and I'd like to pretend it's like I've got an incredible eye for talent, right? It's like I'm sure there are lots of people who we asked to speak who haven't gone on to have illustrious careers in search marketing. But yeah, it's like when you hear these kind of stories of people who are like, you go in and you go, oh, wow, they've done such great work, like they've, and done such great things. Like, so yeah, there are lots of people who I've been very fortunate to have had a tiny part in getting them started in that kind of process of, them going on and doing great stuff in their careers. And that's like, for me, like hugely like rewarding as an experience.
What is one thing you do every day that brings you a tiny pocket of joy?
Yeah, we were talking about this beforehand. You said I couldn't talk about cycling. I actually haven't been cycling a lot at the moment. I did the really weird stuff. So it's not even Peloton. It's called Zwift. So that's kind of like a weird computer game where you ride your bike and the characters move along. And I'm pretty useless at the moment, but during COVID, I was at a pretty high standard. So that's probably the honest answer. But yeah, I don't know, things like I've got 2 whippets.
What's a whippet?
It's a particular type of dog. So they're like you know, like you get greyhounds, like a racing dog.
Yeah.
They're like a slightly miniature version of that.
Okay.
Not like you get Italian greyhounds, which are the really little ones. So I've got Huxley and Rupert. So I take them for a walk every day. And yeah, like they're good fun. Obviously, family and stuff as well. But yeah, I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to do what I do for a living. So it allows me to do lots of other stuff around that potentially in a different job I would struggle to find the time to race weird other men on the internet on our little like cycling computer game. But stuff like that sort of like hugely rewarding to me.
So racing other men on your
so you get your computer,
online.
you get your exercise bike, and then you connect it up to your computer, and then you have races with other people all over the world on other exercise bikes.
That must get your blood pumping and like, ready to take on the day.
I mean, so yeah, it's a kind of it's a surprisingly serious enterprise. Like it's amazing when you talk to people about anyone's hobby. Like you kind of go, that's absolutely bonkers. And then you then try and explain your own hobby. And then you realize how bonkers your own hobby is. So yeah, it's one of those ones that like, if I try and go, and then I'm in this team and then the team, there's 12 of us and we do that. And you're like, people are like, what are you talking about? But yeah, that's it for me, Zwifting.
Okay, cool. Zwifting.
So yeah, ZW, then like Swift, but with a Z.
With a Z.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you how you found this. I'll let that be your own little secret. Thank you so much, Kelvin, for joining me. That was really, really good. I hope you had a good time.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. That's it for today on MozPod. Don't forget to use the hashtag MozPod to share anything you found interesting on today's episode. This episode was engineered by Saul Fox, produced by Chima Meja and Joe Cameron, and our YouTube footage was filmed and edited by Sarah Galpin. Remember, curiosity did not kill the cat. It just improved the search rankings. Bye-bye.